Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video because I'm hoping to help you guys out with maybe some high-end purchase making decisions. Today we're going to be talking all about high-end makeup products that I don't reach for. So obviously these are makeup products in my collection that I spent a lot of money on and I just don't find myself reaching for, which is really unfortunate because when you spend a lot of money on a product, you kind of want to get use out of it. Now, some of this is just my collection being too large. Some of it is just me like falling into the habit of like always using my favorites and not cycling through my collection enough. But some of it is that the products just like aren't up to par. So I have 10 products to talk to you guys about today. And if you like this video, definitely let me know in the comment box below because I can film a part 2 to this because I did have more than 10 products, but I wanted to like reel it in and make sure this video wasn't going to be like 25 minutes long. So if you guys are interested in hearing about the 10 products in my makeup collection that I do not reach for, then just keep watching. Alright guys, up first is a palette that I actually meant to return. I reviewed this palette on my channel. I'll leave that video linked down below for you. And I said in that video that I was going to return this palette, but unfortunately I am really bad at returning things and being punctual, and I waited too long to return it. So now it's stuck in my collection and frankly, I just don't reach for it, and I spent a good amount of money on this. It's the Natasha Denona Camo palette, Safari palette. I don't know why I always want to call this the Camo palette. This cost me $129. It's obviously one of her, what is this, 15 pan? 5 times 3, 15. 15 pan eyeshadow palette. It's her first all matte palette. When I first saw this release, I was so excited for it because I just loved the color story of it. I thought it was so unique, and while the shades are super unique and I really love some of them, I think they're so beautiful, this palette just does not perform well. The shadows are really hard to work with in my opinion. I have used every single shade in this palette to kind of see how they perform. I find that the pigmentation doesn't show up on the eyes like it looks in the pan on quite a few of them, and not in a good way. I was really excited about this row specifically, and I found that they are not very pigmented. They take a lot of building, and then a lot of the shades in the palette also just muddy up together and just do not look good. So I can't remember if this is a limited edition palette or not. I feel like this has been a really polarizing palette. There's been some really positive reviews as well as some really negative reviews. For me personally, this palette just did not work. Now that it's stuck in my collection, I feel like I need to try and reach for more. I need to try and make it work for me, especially considering how much I spent on this. But if you're trying to decide on whether or not you need this in your collection, I would have to say it's a no. Next up is a cheek palette by Benefit. Now I purchased this when I was first really getting into makeup. And as I open it, you'll notice I tried to depot Coralista and it did not go very well, so I'm down a shade. Now this does have Hoola in it, which is obviously the Benefit bronzer, which I do really like. I have a mini in my collection I'm almost through, so I've kind of really been focusing on that rather than pulling this out. When I first purchased this, I used it a lot more than I do now, but I just have not reached for this recently, probably in the last like year at least, because I just like don't think that I really like face palettes, specifically like an all blush palette. Like it just seems like a lot to have to pull this out, and while I do really enjoy actually all of the blushes that are in here, I just find it to be a hassle to reach into a blush palette. I would much rather just have singles in my personal opinion. Now if you love blushes and blush palettes, you may have a different opinion on this, but I spent a lot of money on this and I really don't reach into it. And when I bought this, I had the Hoola mini as well as the full size in Rockateur, so I just really did not need this. However, now that I'm looking in this again, I kind of want to pull this out because I really do like the blushes in here, but this is another one that I just do not find myself reaching for. I have another face palette to talk about, and this was limited edition. You cannot get this anymore, but it is the Becca Après-Ski Glow Face Palette. Now, I was so excited when I bought this. This was when it released. This was like an item that I absolutely had to have. As you can tell, you get, oh gosh, okay, so you get a blush, a bronzer, and then like 4 highlights. I think this might be like a bronzer topper. So in here you get Opal, which I mean, I feel like Opal comes in every single thing that Becca releases. This is Bronzed Bondi, which I actually have used this. This is just more of like a summer bronze shade for me, so I have to be selective about when I use this. I've used Icicle a number of times. It's kind of like a white highlighter with a blue shift, but because it has that blue shift, it's just not an everyday sort of wear type of thing. I've used the Winterberry blush a couple of times. It's just Becca blushes are so pigmented, you really have to be careful. And then like this copper shade I just really have not used. I suppose I could try that as a bronzer topper, but And then finally, this is the one that's gotten the most use out of me. This is in Rose Quartz, one of their highlights, but now I have Rose Quartz in a little mini, so I just really don't have a need for this face palette. However, I still love it. And like pulling this out makes me want to use it. Again, I just think I don't reach for face palettes. I just don't think face palettes are for me. I think I need to stop buying them. But yeah, you guys, this is another one that I paid a pretty penny for, and I just unfortunately do not reach into this. Okay, another face palette. Are you seeing a trend here? I don't know if this is available anymore, but this is the Laura Geller Gelato Swirl Illuminator palette, and I used to use this all of the time. I actually do really like this palette as well. It's just I don't reach into face palettes. So this comes with 3 of the Baked Gelato highlights, which I love the Baked Gelato formula. It comes with Gilded Honey, Peach Glow, which I actually ended up liking more than Gilded Honey. Shockingly, I really just bought this for Gilded Honey. And then it also comes with Ballerina, which I also think is really beautiful. So I love all the highlights in this, but for some reason it's just like the bulky packaging that really gets to me, and I just don't reach for this. Now, if you have like a small highlight collection and you really like this formula, if this is still available, I would recommend this, as long as you're not like me and just don't reach into things like this. Really, this is a great product. It's just the bulky packaging, the face palette type of feel that just makes me not reach into this. But I really do want to pull this out. I think I'm going to put this on my desk behind me so that I remember to use this, because I really do love the Laura Geller highlights. Speaking of highlights, I have 2 highlights singles to mention to you guys. The first is one of the Bobbi Brown, I forget what they call these, shimmer bricks. This is her highlighting powder, and this is in the shade Afternoon Glow. You guys, I was so excited to buy this, and I have maybe used it like 2 times, and I think it's because the color really is kind of like too dark for me. For some reason, I thought this was just gonna be like, this was gonna give me like the most beautiful like bronzed glow sort of a look, but I just haven't found a way to like make it work in the way that I want. And again, I think part of the reason is because this shade is just a hair too dark for me. Maybe I can pull it back out in the summer if I remember to and use it some more, but this was so expensive. I should not have bought this. I should have returned it when I like wasn't using it. Super unfortunate. I've heard a lot of mixed feedback on the Bobbi Brown highlights. The formula is not my favorite either. I will be upfront about that. Just not my favorite formula. It's not a bad formula, but for the price, I don't know. This is one that I like truly don't reach for, and it's not like, oh, I like it, but I don't reach for it. Like this doesn't really work for me. And then the second highlight that I don't reach for, but I do really like this. I don't know why I just don't reach for this more. It is the Makeup Forever highlight in the shade, I forget, they do like, I think this is in the shade 1. It is the more pinky of the 2 highlights. It's a beautiful highlight, and again, I was so excited to buy this. It's so beautiful. I need to pull this out. I just need to pull this out. I think the reason this frustrates me so much is because I realize it's such a beautiful highlight. It's like right up my alley. It's like a pink champagne, like super light. Like this would work for my skin tone so well, but for some reason I do not reach for this. So I need to pull this into my collection during the next Shop My Stash and really get some love out of this because it deserves it. But another product in my collection that I spent a lot of money for and I don't reach for. This palette, I'm sure many people can relate. This is the ABH Subculture palette. Now, I don't hate this like not everyone. I don't hate this like some people hate this, but because it is more of a tricky formula to work with, I do not reach into this. And shockingly, like when I was starting to see other reviews come in saying like, oh, like it's a really tough formula to work with, I didn't care because it came with the shade Fudge, which I'd heard so many great things about, and I really wanted this palette for like Fudge specifically. I thought Cube was a really cool color, and then I also really liked the yellows in this Untamed shade, but I just don't reach into this because one, for my like not really artistic mind, for some reason I find this really hard to think of looks to create outside of like a warm brown smoky eye. I just don't know how me personally, like with my like beginner level makeup, in my opinion, that I would find a way to like incorporate the shades that I want to. And then on top of that, it is a very difficult formula to work with. So unfortunately, this just kind of sits on my eyeshadow palette shelf and doesn't get a whole ton of love. Super sad. Probably just shouldn't have bought this, but for some reason ABH products just make me feel like I need them. So the next product is like a lid topper, and it is the Tarte Chrome Paint Pot in the shade Top Yacht. And I feel like it wasn't like everyone was talking about these, but when I did hear people talk about these, they were just speaking so highly of them. And this is a super, super beautiful shade, but for me, when I have to like dip my finger in to the shade and then like put it on my lid, that just seems like a lot of work for me. For me personally, I just don't love products like that. Even liquid shadows, I find myself reaching for less and less, but like I said, when it's like a potted type of formula that I have to dip my finger in and then tap it on my eye and like make that work, it just, that seems like a lot of effort, so I just never reach into this. Next up, I have some eyeliners to mention, and there's actually a lot of eyeliners in my collection that I just don't reach for because I'm always reaching for my ColourPop gel liner because that's like the best formula for my waterline. I also really like the new Essence pencil, which is like $3, but the one that I chose to talk to you guys about today is the Urban Decay 24/7 Glide On pencils. I actually have, I think, 2 or 3 more of these too. A couple of them are minis, a couple of them full size. Specifically, this pink one in the shade, I think Sweetheart, Heartless, is the most disappointing to me. This just, I cannot get this to show up in my waterline, which is so sad because I really was excited about this shade specifically for the waterline. Now this one, which is in the shade Mainline, it's like a dark blue. This one stays a little bit better, but still I just don't reach for these that often because I just have my formulas that I really love. And while I think this is an okay formula, it's just not the best for me personally. If you have watery, if you have like really watery eyes or really struggle to get eyeliners to stay in your waterline, I feel like this formula is hit or miss on these shades as whether or not it's going to actually stay in your waterline all day. And then the final item I have to talk to you guys about are my MAC lipsticks. And I've actually decluttered quite a few of them. So MAC was one of like the first brands. It was like the only brand I used in college. This was like, I know MAC used to be a huge thing on YouTube, but I wasn't even watching YouTube. And MAC was just like my brand. So I had tons of lipsticks. I know you could like take in empty products and get lipsticks, and there's just a ton of shades that really spoke to me. And then once I did start to get into YouTube and saw like people like talking about their MAC lipstick collection, then there were even more shades that I really wanted. But for some reason I feel like most of the shades in my lipstick collection, my MAC lipstick collection, just like are not good shades for me. Like for example, here's one. This is in the shade Lustering. This is like a bright pink. I don't know why I picked that out for myself. Like this is just not a shade I would ever wear. I guess I have 2 Lustering shades, but they don't look like they're the same. Okay, I'm not sure how I ended up with 2 Lustering shades, even though I know, okay, so there's a luster formula or a lustering formula. I don't know whether or not the formula is luster or lustering, but I have either luster in the lipstick or lustering in the lipstick twice. Nice. Ruby Woo I have, and while I really do like the shade, it's just a tough formula to work with because it is so matte, but it is like just like the perfect just red, cherry red shade. I also, oh yeah, I used to have the shade Snob, but I got rid of that. That was like way too pale pink for me. Here's another one. This is in the shade Speed Dial, and this is in their Cream Sheen formula, which just again is not my favorite. And again, it's just like a brighter pink shade, and like bright pink lipsticks really are not my thing. I do have some darker shades. This is in the shade Diva, which again, I actually really do like the shade, but I just am not a huge fan of the matte formula by MAC. So unfortunately, this used to be larger even, but I have a pretty, you know, decent size MAC lipstick collection, and I just do not reach for them. After that, you guys, that is going to conclude the 10 high-end makeup products in my collection that I do not reach for. Again, if you liked this video, let me know and I will film a part 2 to this. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, don't forget to do so before you go. I post videos every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Sometimes I try to toss in a bonus video if I am up to date on my filming schedule. So I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. But other than that, I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye.